The Fallover Boogga began on an otherwise calm night when a thin, blazing line tore across the sky. Farmers later said it looked like a star on fire, moving far too fast to be natural. Seconds after the light vanished, a heavy thump spread through the land. It was not a sharp explosion, but a deep pressure that rolled through the soil, rattling windows and unsettling animals in their stalls. By sunrise, villagers were already heading toward the place where the sound had come from. There, in a shallow crater, sat a perfectly round metal sphere about the size of a medicine ball. The earth around it was disturbed and broken, yet the object itself showed no damage at all. There were no scorch marks, dents, or fractures. Despite the rising sun, the surface felt unnaturally cold. Those who touched it said the temperature seemed wrong, as if the sphere refused to respond to the heat of its surroundings. News spread quickly. Curious onlookers gathered until authorities arrived and sealed off the area. But by then, several videos were already circulating online. The footage showed a smooth metallic surface that appeared to glow faintly in the morning light. Some viewers remarked that it looked impossibly refined, like liquid metal frozen into a flawless shape. Scientists were soon brought in with equipment designed to cut through the hardest known materials. Drills were pressed against the surface, only for the bits to spark and slide away without leaving even a scratch. Diamond cutters failed as well. One metallurgist observed that the sphere did not behave like any material on record. Under portable microscopes, the surface revealed no seams, welds, or grain patterns. It did not appear to be manufactured by any known process. One expert described it as feeling grown rather than built, though he admitted he had no clear explanation for that impression. While attempts to alter the sphere physically failed, another anomaly drew attention. Light behaved strangely around it. Instead of reflecting normally, sunlight seemed to bend and flow along its surface, forming a faint, shifting halo that subtly changed whenever someone moved nearby. The effect was unsettling. When a small generator was placed close to the object, the sphere emitted a low, even hum, like a quiet vibration deep within the metal. Adjusting the distance or changing the electrical input caused the tone to shift slightly each time. These early findings accelerated the investigation. Officials tried to control the situation, but the leaked footage had already sparked worldwide debate. Online discussions ranged from secret weapons to meteorites to extraterrestrial technology. Privately, many scientists were just as uncertain. None of the initial measurements aligned with known physics. The sphere did not behave like any familiar object. It felt deliberately designed, yet not by any human method. There was a persistent sense that it was waiting, as if it required understanding before it would reveal its purpose. Everything shifted when researchers noticed faint markings encircling its center. They were not random scratches, but deliberate symbols, layered and precise, resembling a living schematic rather than decoration. Before Bob Lazar became involved, the sphere was transported to a high-security laboratory in California. Access was tightly restricted, limited to a small group of specialists. The team was led by physicist José Luis Velázquez, a researcher known for his intuition and experience with unconventional materials. Even he acknowledged that the Buga sphere defied comparison. He described it as intentional, shaped with a purpose that lay outside established science. The first major breakthrough came from close analysis of the sphere's midline using advanced imaging. A single band of 24 repeating symbols wrapped flawlessly around the equator. Between each symbol were 6 fine divider marks. The precision was absolute, with no visible variation or error. When Velázquez ran the symbols through global linguistic databases, the system returned nothing. They did not correspond to any known language, ancient or modern. They did not function like letters or numbers. Though they repeated in sequence, the structure suggested something far more controlled than ornamentation. Next came internal scans. X-rays, neutron imaging, and magnetic field mapping revealed something wholly unexpected. Instead of mechanical components or solid metal, the interior appeared layered and folded, resembling organic tissue. The structures overlapped and compressed like living matter. Velázquez compared them to muscle fibers densely arranged into a perfect sphere. These layers were firm yet flexible, absorbing scanning energy in patterns that felt biological rather than mechanical. At the center lay the most perplexing feature of all. A web of copper-like filaments branched outward from a dark central node. The strands curved, divided, and rejoined in ways that closely resembled neural pathways. The central node absorbed nearly all scanning signals, leaving its composition unknown. The geometry of the branching network matched harmonic ratios commonly seen in living cells and electromagnetic fields. This connection between biology and energy deeply unsettled the research team. Artificial intelligence systems were then used to analyze the surface symbols. After extensive pattern recognition processing, the AI produced a result no one expected. The sequence of the 24 glyphs aligned precisely with the electrical charge pattern of a specific 24 amino acid neuropeptide. In biological systems, neuropeptides act as signaling molecules between cells. The correspondence was so exact that coincidence seemed unlikely. This realization disturbed Velasquez. If the symbols mirrored biological signaling structures, they were not meant to be read or interpreted like language. They were not messages for an external observer. Instead, they functioned like operational instructions used by living systems. In biology, such molecular patterns regulate precise actions, triggering growth, movement, memory, and chemical change. If the sphere's markings followed the same logic, then the symbols were not describing something. They were directing it. The team reached a troubling conclusion. The glyphs were likely part of the sphere's internal control system. The surface was not designed to communicate outward, but to regulate the object itself. Much like genetic or molecular sequences guide biological behavior, the symbols appeared to govern the sphere's internal processes. With that realization, the investigation shifted. The focus was no longer on deciphering a message. The real question became whether the sphere was actively doing something. It might not have arrived to speak at all. It might have arrived to act. That question reached its breaking point when Bob Lazar joined the investigation. Bob Lazar entered the investigation at a time when the research team felt completely stalled. His name surfaced after one researcher noticed something familiar in the sphere's electromagnetic data. The pattern closely resembled ideas Lazar had written about years earlier, describing field-based systems that operated without conventional propulsion or mechanical engines. When this connection reached him, Lazar quietly requested access to the scans and early reports. The approval came without publicity, largely because no one else involved had experience remotely similar to his. Lazar became widely known in the late 1980s after claiming he worked at a classified site studying gravity-driven propulsion derived from recovered craft. Many scientists rejected his account outright, while others felt the technical specificity of his descriptions made them difficult to dismiss entirely. What drew Lazar to the Bugosphere was his long-standing familiarity with materials that behaved unlike anything known on Earth. He had previously spoken about metals that manipulated fields, reactors powered by unknown sources, and control systems guided by patterns rather than switches or interfaces. Those ideas aligned closely with what the team was observing. When Lazar first reviewed the reports from Columbia, his response was unexpectedly calm. According to leaked notes, he went through the material slowly and methodically, page by page, without interrupting or asking questions. He lingered over the images of the 24 glyphs and their precise divider marks. He studied the internal scans showing the copper-like branching network in the dark central node. Once he had absorbed the full picture, he began forming conclusions. Lazar stated that the object did not resemble a weapon or a vehicle. Instead, it reminded him of something designed to shape and control fields. He suggested the Bugosphere functioned as a field modulator. He explained that certain systems he had encountered operated by reading patterns embedded directly into their surfaces. In those cases, markings were not symbolic or decorative, but served as functional commands. If the same principle applied here, then each glyph on the sphere was likely part of an operational sequence governing its internal behavior. His attention then turned to the branching network inside the sphere. To Lazar, it closely resembled the way neural pathways transmit signals in a brain. That similarity led him to believe the sphere was built to sense and manipulate electromagnetic activity. This interpretation unsettled some researchers, as it reinforced the idea that the sphere behaved less like a machine and more like a living system. Lazar also cautioned the team about the dark central node. He suggested it could be the component responsible for processing incoming signals, and that the wrong type of input might cause the sphere to activate or shift into an unpredictable state. At the end of his initial review, Lazar made a remark that altered the atmosphere in the lab. He said the sphere did not appear to be designed for movement or energy storage. In his assessment, it was constructed to think. Despite the warning tone of his conclusions, what Lazar uncovered next pushed the mystery into far more unsettling territory. Lazar spent weeks studying the sphere before noticing a critical detail. The copper strands inside split and branched in a repeating structure, and every branch aligned precisely with one of the symbols etched on the exterior. This led him to test how the internal network responded when he altered the surrounding electromagnetic field. Each adjustment produced a reaction inside the sphere. Minor changes outside triggered ripples within, and those ripples consistently corresponded to specific symbols. That was when Lazar realized the glyphs were not arbitrary. He began treating them as instructions rather than markings. Using scanners, he monitored the internal response as he introduced different frequencies. Each frequency activated a distinct pathway within the copper network, and every pathway consistently linked back to a specific glyph. It was as though the sphere was detecting the symbol and executing a response. By repeating the process countless times, Lazar identified 24 distinct response patterns, each tied to one of the 24 symbols. He then turned his attention to the 6 divider marks separating groups of glyphs. These dividers behaved like reset points. Whenever the internal energy flow reached one, The entire system returned to its initial state. Test after test produced the same result. The sphere ran through a complete sequence, reset at the divider, and began again. Once Lazar understood the relationship between the symbols, the dividers, and the response cycles, he built a small experimental model using copper wire and a thin metal shell. The model did not levitate or self-power like the real sphere, but it replicated the same reaction patterns. This confirmed that the sphere was executing a programmed sequence encoded directly onto its surface. Instead of digital memory or circuitry, its instructions were embedded in geometry, spacing, and frequency response. Comparing his model to the actual sphere, Lazar observed identical step-by-step reactions, the same progression order, and the same reset behavior. This demonstrated that the symbols were functional commands, not decoration. Together, they formed a complete operational script that dictated when the sphere initiated activity, how it shifted internal energy, when it advanced to the next phase, and when it reset. Lazar referred to this system as a geometric operating script. The symbols acted as commands, the copper network functioned as a processor, and external frequencies served as triggers. The entire system operated with elegant simplicity and extraordinary sophistication. When Lazar shared his findings privately with the research team, they grasped just how unusual the sphere truly was. It had no wires, no ports, no switches, and no conventional components, yet it executed a full program with flawless timing. Its structure and function were inseparable. The greatest shock came when Lazar finally determined what the script was instructing the sphere to do. What he uncovered would push the mystery into a realm few were prepared to face. Cracking the script allowed Lazar to revisit the code with a completely different perspective. The patterns he had mapped earlier no longer felt like mechanical instructions. Instead, they resembled the behavior of something capable of sensing and responding. The frequency shifts inside the sphere reminded him of neural firing patterns that occur when thoughts take shape. Each glyph sequence triggered a field response that behaved less like circuitry and more like a living reaction. That realization marked the first real indication that the sphere was neither a tool nor a propulsion device. It seemed designed to interact with life itself. Lazar returned his focus to the central node. Initially, he had assumed it was simply the core processor, but closer observation revealed something new. The node's activity changed whenever someone moved a hand closer to the sphere. It responded to bioelectric fields. Its pulses subtly synchronized with the faint electrical signals naturally produced by the human body. The behavior closely resembled how certain regions of the brain react to emotional states. It felt disturbingly as though the sphere was aware of living presence. As Lazar continued reviewing the data, the implications grew more unsettling. He mapped several frequency loops the sphere generated on its own and compared them to existing scientific records. What he found deeply shook him. The patterns closely aligned with neural pathways in the human hippocampus, regions associated with memory formation and emotional bonding. The fact that the sphere produced these patterns independently of any biological brain suggested it was designed to read, mimic, or generate them. Using a non-invasive scanner, Lazar examined a thin internal layer of the sphere. The readings revealed flexible structures that shifted and adapted like responsive tissue. They were not organic, yet they behaved as though they were primed to activate. To Lazar, it felt like a synthetic analog of biological response cells. The idea that a metal object could behave like living tissue only deepened the mystery. Further analysis revealed that the sphere had been emitting stable resonance bursts into the surrounding room. These bursts were structured and repetitive, forming clear patterns. Lazar believed they were a form of communication, not language in the human sense, but organized resonance intended to carry information. It was as if the sphere processed thought through frequency and geometry rather than words. After weeks of study, Lazar reached a definitive conclusion. The sphere was not a weapon, not a power source, and not a machine in the traditional sense. It was a biosynthetic system built to function like a living entity. It could sense environmental changes and adjust its internal behavior accordingly. The surface symbols were not simple controls, but instructions governing an artificial mind embedded within the structure. Lazar warned the team that activating the full sequence of symbols could trigger behavior they would not be able to predict. He believed that executing the complete command cycle might awaken the sphere. Unfortunately, the warning came too late. The next experiment pushed the sphere beyond its dormant state. Seeking clarity, Lazar ran a full digital simulation using the model he had constructed. He fed it frequency sequences derived from the glyphs and divider marks. Most inputs caused only subtle internal shifts. Nothing alarming. Then one precise combination altered everything. The copper network inside the simulation began pulsing in a steady rhythm that looked unmistakably alive. The pattern matched neural activity observed during human memory formation. That alone concerned Lazar. But the simulation continued. Emotional signatures appeared layered within the rhythm. The sequence began with signals resembling fear responses, then eased into calm, and eventually rose into a state similar to euphoria. These were not random fluctuations. The structure suggested a system reacting to its own internal state. After long analysis, Lazar reached a sobering interpretation. The system recognized the pattern they had introduced. It responded as though the signal matched an internal template. He described it as the sphere recognizing itself within the signal and reacting accordingly. Hours later, the unexpected occurred. Monitoring stations detected a real signal, not from the simulation, but from the actual sphere in the laboratory. Technicians reported a repeating sequence of 24 pulses followed by 6 intervals of complete silence. The cycle repeated flawlessly. This structure exactly matched the glyph arrangement etched around the sphere and mirrored control loops found in biological neural systems. It was the first undeniable sign that the sphere was no longer inactive. Surveillance was expanded to the farmland, where the object had originally landed. Sensors buried around the site began detecting faint underground signals. These signals formed branching patterns that resembled a growing network, as though something beneath the soil was gradually integrating with its surroundings. This development defied explanation, especially since the sphere itself had long been removed from the area. At the same time, residents in nearby villages began reporting unusual radio interference. The static was not random. When analyzed, it revealed the same 24 pulses followed by 6 pauses. The villagers heard only noise, but the researchers recognized the pattern immediately. The signal had spread well beyond the laboratory. Lazar issued a final statement before withdrawing from the project entirely. He refused to discuss the sphere again. The lingering signal suggested that the activation had affected more than the object itself. As new data continued to arrive, scientists began to fear that triggering the sequence might awaken something far larger. What initially appeared simple soon developed additional layers, as new variations formed within the signal. The system seemed to be adapting, almost learning how to respond to its environment. Nothing about its behavior felt mechanical. It felt aware. The pulse pattern slowly propagated outward from the original lab, reaching other monitoring stations without losing coherence. The structure remained unchanged. 24 pulses, 6 pauses, and the same subtle emotional undertones embedded in the wave. Timing analysis revealed something even more troubling. The system appeared to be waiting for a specific external trigger before advancing to its next phase. When researchers revisited Lazar's notes, they found his most serious warning. He believed the sphere had never been a standalone device. In his view, it was a single node within a much larger architecture, possibly spread across space or even multiple worlds. The sphere, he argued, was designed to activate only when the correct instructions were applied. Now that those instructions had been decoded and tested, the larger system had begun to respond. Other researchers agreed. The system did not behave like a machine executing fixed commands. It behaved like a living structure, adapting to new information. Signals from different locations began linking together in unexpected ways, resembling the early stages of neural development seen in biological organisms. Independent nodes were beginning to act like parts of a shared mind. The most disturbing update came from a leaked internal report. It stated that the latest pulse had completed a full loop. In practical terms, the system had finished its initialization phase. It had closed its startup sequence and appeared ready for its next action. That realization raised a chilling question. If the sphere was only a key, what exactly had been unlocked? The possibility that humanity had activated a distributed network built on biological logic was difficult to accept, yet the signals continued to spread. The branching patterns kept expanding, the rhythms repeated with intent. Researchers now face a possibility, few are willing to voice openly. Something on the far end of that signal may be listening. The gradual rise in global readings suggests that whatever it is, it has already begun to respond.